I'll do now is just follow on from the concepts that Vic was talking about, and hopefully show you a little prototype of the first product that's been put out under the Chord banner, which is the Chord App. So, as Vic said, the Chord App is essentially an interface to the underlying mechanics in the Chord network. Today has kind of three main points of functionality: the ability to create a graph in the network, the ability to make claims and attach those to that graph, and the ability to query those graphs. Is that okay? Cool. So now we're going to seamlessly switch over to the video. So just while we're setting that up, what we've done is we've placed the concept of identity at the core of the Chord network. And the reason we do this is so that we can really just verify that agents in the network are who they say they are. I'm just going to put that on pause. And that the statements they're making are actually true, and we can infer trust from those statements. An identity can be thought of as an aggregation of all your existing identifiers. And by identifiers we mean anything from a PGP key to a social media account. And the idea of an identity in Chord is to aggregate all of those things. So essentially an identity in Chord is a graph which is made up of cryptographically verified claims. So what I'll do now is just show you how that looks in a Dapp. So what we've done here is this is a prototype at this stage. We've just simplified it for purposes of demonstration. So I'll take you through that now. So what we'll look at first is the so what we'll look at first is the journey of creating a new graph. So we call that registering an identity. And at the core of an ID is essentially an Ethereum public key. You can either use an existing key store, or we also offer the ability to create a new key store for those who don't have one. So to register, what we essentially do here is send a signed transaction to the network and add a new entry to the Chord registry under that public key. And now that public key becomes your Chord ID. So the timings might be slightly out on this video. Yeah, there we go, magic. So there's a brief setup section just after you've registered your Chord ID. And here we're just attaching some superficial profile data to an identity. And as you can see here, a new identity has been created. We've got a little avatar there and a name. So profile data in a network is essentially just another claim, a statement that you've made about your identity. And this is a self-signed claim that you place into your graph. But other agents can come along and countersign that and say, yep, that looks like you, and that's your name. Yep. So as Vic mentioned, we have the concept of guardians in the network, and guardians essentially provide authority services by running guardian nodes. And here we're going to talk about just one example of a guardian, which could be Keybase. And Keybase would provide this authority service underneath the wider umbrella of identity. So to make a claim, you basically send a request to the Chord Guardian, usually attaching some sort of proof along with that the Guardian can use to verify that that claim is actually genuine. So we've sent that claim, got verified, luckily, and there you go. You can see that that claim's been added to your graph. You can view it, and it's visible in the network for others to explore as well. And so on the flip side, we can search for other Chord IDs just by inputting their public address, a very short public address, and then we go. We've searched for Mr. Fred Tibbles, and he's actually got two claims. He's got a Keybase claim, and he's also cannily connected his Uport account as well. And that concludes the prototype. Okay. Switch back. Cheers, dude. Cool. So, what we're just going to do now is quickly take a look at some of the architecture that underlies that that Dapp that we just saw. So we're just going to take a look at all the different points in the architecture and the tools that we've used to make up that stack. And we're just going to look at the data flow that goes along with that on the right-hand side there. So first and foremost, a Dapp can exchange data with nodes running in the Chord network. And each of those nodes exposes a GraphQL API. This allows the client to declaratively define their data requests whilst allowing the node to maintain a nice lightweight universal API. And for all you old school Web 2 developers out there, we use React, Redux, and a little bit of style components for the flourishes there. And then on the testnet, as I said, GraphQL and Go. So yeah, it's just simple little GraphQL queries you can see there. And all that's doing is saying, please give me some claims. All the claims are related to this Chord ID. Okay, so as well as queries, that GraphQL API also exposes some mutation operations. So in this case, a mutation would be create a new graph. So here we have the Dapp sending the mutation to the node. The node verifies the signature that's come along with that transaction, and if all is okay, then the Chord ID is sent to the Chord registry, which is a smart contract running on Ethereum, which essentially just maps public addresses to the graph hash. Okay. So as I mentioned in the walkthrough, profile data are essentially self-signed claims. And the raw data itself, so the image or a piece of text, that's stored on Swarm. And the hash that we get back from Swarm makes up the claim value. And that's what's actually stored in the user's graph. And then a Dapp can just fetch that data from Swarm and render it as per usual. Yep. So the other point in that stack are these Chord Guardians. And at the moment, they are simply microservices running on the Chord Guardian node. And From a Dapp, a user can send a statement about their identity. And then the Chord Guardian will run some verification checks. Primarily, they'll check that the transaction has a valid signature, and they will also run any additional verification checks. And that's entirely up to the implementer, right? So that could be OAuth, it could be multi-factor auth, it could be JWT or TLS Notary, for example. So the Guardian would run those verification checks, and providing they were all successful, it would return a verified claim. And that's an example of a verified claim there. And this verified claim is actually what ends up in your Chord graph, and is distributed throughout the network there. Alrighty. So as I mentioned, we're currently developing the Dapp, and the plan is to release this at the end of March at our dev meetup in London, which you're all invited to, if you're going to be in London, obviously. It's on March the 29th. Our website's there, chord.network. So hit that up for all your additional links, including our GitHub, and we've got all the open source code on there. Yeah, I think that's it. Open to questions. Q&A. Any questions out there for myself, Victor? Sweet. Okay. No questions. That's cool. Well, we're wearing these hoodies. So yeah, come and find us, and we'd love to have a chat about anything we've presented, any of the concepts, especially the tech stack. We'd love to have a chat about that as well. All right, thanks very much.